always believed my father was just a regular man. He woke up every morning at 6 a.m., ironed his shirts even on Sundays, and paid bills earlier like it was a religion. In Maplewood, Ohio, a town where people wave even when they're mad at you, he was George the Reliable. But the day we buried him, I realized we never really knew who he was. At first it was the usual crowd: neighbors, the mailman, old bowling buddies. Then came the strangers: women, kids, some in suits, some in ripped jeans, some crying, some glaring. They didn't look like they belonged together, but every one of them looked like him. Same jawline, same eyes, same tired sadness. A woman in her 40s stood up. Her lipstick was bright red, too bold for a funeral, I thought. Then she said it. He was my father, too. I froze. My sister Gina gripped my arm so tightly, I felt her nails. That sentence cracked everything wide open. My mother's face turned to stone. Someone in the back gasped. And the man inside that casket? Suddenly, he wasn't just our father. He was everyone's father. And maybe nobody's tall. She walked straight up to the front, heels clicking on the old church floor. The kind of woman who didn't ask for attention. She commanded it. "I'm Carmen," she said, turning to face the pews. "I met George in Columbus in 1992. He was my partner for 12 years. We had 3 boys together." I felt like the walls of the church shrank. The air grew heavy. "We thought he died in a car accident in 2007. That's what his friend told us when he stopped showing up." I glanced at my mum. Her lips were thin, pressed tight, like if she spoke, she'd explode. Carmen reached into her purse and pulled out a photo. Him. Her. 3 boys. One of them looked just like my little brother Tyler. Same dimples, same half smile. Gina whispered, "She's not lying." But Carmen wasn't finished. "He wasn't just my partner," she added. "He told me I was his only family. He made me believe he had no one else in the world." Then came another voice from the back. I think he was my dad too." A girl, maybe 17, soft voice, shaking hands. She held up a small framed photo. Him, again, but younger, holding a baby in Tulsa. Carmen turned to the girl. "Tulsa?" The girl nodded. And just like that, the floodgates opened. One by one they stood. Different cities, different decades, different mothers. But the same man. My father had built 10 lives, and every single one of us had lived in the shadows of his lie. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet, but my mind was a war zone. Names, faces, cities, all swirling around in my head like a broken carousel. At 2 a.m., I grabbed a flashlight and went down to the garage. Dad's sanctuary. He used to spend hours there, fixing nothing, just tinkering with old tools and pretending to be busy. The air still smelled like motor oil and pine wood. I started opening drawers, pulling open boxes. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, just that I had to find something that made sense. That's when I noticed the back panel of the old workbench. It looked loose. I pried it open, and behind it, stuffed into a hollow space, were cardboard boxes labeled only with dates. I opened the first one. Letters, dozens of them. They were from different women, some handwritten, others typed, some pages tear-stained, others angry and torn. "Missed you last weekend. Don't forget Jimmy's birthday. Why did you lie again, George? Photos too. Babies, toddlers, family portraits." I went numb. He hadn't just cheated. He had lived with these families, loved them, at least long enough to get comfortable. I kept digging, pulling letter after letter from the box. Every envelope was a punch to the gut. And somewhere around sunrise, my sister Gina walked in and saw me surrounded by paper. She looked down, picked up a photo, and whispered, "What the hell did he do?" I looked up at her and said, "He wasn't our father." "Not really. He was everyone's." We didn't talk much that morning. Gina made coffee without asking. I laid the letters out on the dining room table, organized by postmark, city, and woman's name. By the time the sun was fully up, the table looked like a crime scene. I grabbed a notepad and started drawing a map of the United States. Columbus, Tulsa, New Orleans, Kansas City, Atlanta, Detroit, Nashville, St. Louis, Albuquerque, Virginia Beach. 10 cities, 10 women, 10 entire lives. Gina hovered over my shoulder. "This is insane," she muttered. "It's a pattern," I said. He rotated, traveled, maybe even timed it. It hit me then. Those business trips he always took. The weekends he was hunting. The birthdays he had to miss for work emergencies. He hadn't missed them. He'd been with other families. Gina walked over to a stack of envelopes. "This one's from Atlanta," she said. "Woman named May. She sounds mad." She read the last lines out loud. "If you ever step foot in Georgia again, George, I swear I'll make you regret it." I looked up at her. "Well," I said, "that sounds like someone we should talk to." She nodded slowly. "You think she knows about all the others?" I shook my head. "I don't think any of them do." We both stood there in silence, facing the letters, the names, the betrayals. And we realized we weren't just mourning a father. We were uncovering a machine made of lies. We didn't want to do it at first. I mean, who wants to reach out to people who might be your half-siblings? But curiosity is a powerful thing. So we sent messages, emails, even a few phone calls. And somehow, by the end of the week, 7 of them agreed to meet. It was a cold Sunday afternoon when they came, one by one, some alone, some with partners, some guarded, some already shaking with rage. They gathered in our mom's living room, sitting on fold-out chairs and an old couch that creaked like it wanted to scream. There was James, a mechanic from St. Louis, Sierra, a nurse from Detroit, Cameron, a jazz musician from Nashville, Mia, a school counselor from New Orleans, Frank, a cop from Tulsa, and 2 others, Rachel and Noah, quiet, anxious, unsure. We didn't talk for a while, just sat, like strangers at a bus station, all waiting for someone to say it first. Finally, Gina stood up. She held up one of the letters. "My name is Gina," she said. "He raised me in Ohio. Told me I was his only daughter." Sierra scoffed. "He told me that too." One by one, they began to speak. Same stories, different cities. He told each of them he had no family, that they were his only world. But we were his family. All of us. Just scattered. Hidden. Lied to. James cracked open a beer he'd brought in a paper bag. "He played us all," he said. "So what are we going to do about it?" No one answered right away, but I looked around the room and saw it. Something rising behind the hurt. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Resolve. He built his world on lies. We were going to dismantle it. Together. The more we talked, the more pieces started to click. Mia, the counselor from New Orleans, remembered something odd. He used to give me cash in these old envelopes, always said, "Don't ask questions, just save it." James nodded. Same here, called it emergency stash, never explained where it came from. Then Frank, the cop from Tulsa, spoke up. Before he died, he called me out of nowhere. Said something about a storage unit in Virginia Beach. thought he was losing his mind. We all looked at each other. 2 days later, we drove to Virginia Beach. It was one of those dull, windowless storage buildings with a keypad and a grumpy manager who didn't ask questions as long as you paid in cash. Frank had the name and unit number. It was still active, paid up for the next 3 years. The inside looked empty at first. Just a folding chair and a fishing rod. But behind a loose floorboard, Cameron found it. A small steel safe box, about the size of a shoebox. It was locked, but James had brought his tools. 2 minutes later, it popped open. Inside were 3 passports, all with different names and the same photo. A thick stack of $100 bills bound with a red rubber band. A gold wedding band, a single key on a brass chain, and a folded sheet of paper with 10 cities, 10 dates, and 10 initials. We passed the list around in silence. Gina looked at me. "It's a road map," she whispered. I nodded. To every lie he ever told. That safe box didn't just hold secrets. It held the proof. And now, we had the means to expose him. We decided to start in New Orleans. It felt poetic somehow. One of the oldest cities, thick with ghosts and forgotten stories. Mia offered to lead. She still had friends there, connections, and maybe unfinished business. The house was small, pale blue, with peeling shutters, sitting on the edge of the 9th ward. The woman who opened the door was in her 60s, wearing a worn LSU sweatshirt and the look of someone who hadn't slept well in years. Her name was Teresa. Mia introduced us carefully, gently. "We're connected through George." Teresa didn't flinch. She didn't even look surprised. She stepped aside and let us in. Her living room was filled with photographs. Her with George at jazz festivals, at a crawfish boil, dancing at a wedding. He looked older in some, younger in others, but always smiling. "I thought I was the last," she said, handing us a photo of him holding a baby. "I thought he stayed because he chose me. He said he'd retire here, said he wanted to be buried in Louisiana soil." We told her the truth, about Ohio, about Carmen, about the girl from Tulsa, the map, the safe box, the others. She listened, silent. Then without a word, she stood and walked to a cabinet. From inside, she pulled a metal box and slid it across the table. Inside were property deeds, bank statements, a second cell phone, a folder labeled George, private. "I kept it all," she said. "For years I didn't know why. Maybe I hoped he'd come back. Maybe I knew he wouldn't." We asked her one question. "Do you want to help us?" She didn't hesitate. Teresa looked down at the papers and said, "If you're going to take down the man I loved, take everything he built with him." And just like that, the first family fell. But this time, not in heartbreak, in righteous anger. Frank didn't talk much during our trip to New Orleans. He was polite, focused, but you could tell something was brewing underneath. So when we got back, he said, "Let me run something on my own." He meant business. Frank had access, not just to databases, but to old files, sealed documents, forgotten archives. The kind of things the rest of us would never even know how to look for. A week later, he called us. "You need to come to Tulsa." We met him at the precinct, after hours. He led us into the cold, dim basement where old case files lived. He pulled out a thick manila folder and dropped it on the table. "This was sealed in 1989, he said. "Domestic violence charge, battery. A woman named Deborah filed it. She dropped it later, but not before giving a full statement." He opened the file and slid it toward us. There it was. George Anderson. Same face, different alias. Apparently, he'd been living under the name Gregory Allen at the time. He beat her, Frank said quietly. She said he was sweet for 2 years. Then one night, he snapped, took the TV remote and, well, it got bad. Gina looked pale. Our dad, Frank nodded. Your dad, my dad, our dad. The case was dropped after Deborah moved out of state. No follow-up, no trial. But this, Frank said, tapping the file, this shows pattern. Control. Charm. Then violence. He didn't just lie. He destroyed. We all stood in silence. It was one thing to learn he was a liar. But this made him a predator. Frank closed the folder. I want in, he said. And with that, the cop became our weapon. We couldn't keep it from her any longer. Mom had been quiet these past few weeks, retreating into herself. She'd stopped asking questions, maybe because she already knew she wouldn't like the answers. One night, after dinner, I sat across from her at the kitchen table, the same spot Dad used to butter his toast every morning. Mum, I said softly, how much did you know? She didn't look up, just stared at the cracks in the table like they might speak for her. Then finally she whispered, I found out about the second family in '92. My heart dropped. Gina, standing in the doorway, gasped. You knew? For decades? Mom nodded slowly, her voice trembling. I found a receipt. Hotel in Kansas City. And then a letter. I confronted him. He didn't deny it. So you just stayed? I asked, trying to stay calm. I stayed for you, she said. You were still little. We had bills. I had no job, no degree, nowhere to go. And he promised it was over. But it wasn't, Gina said bitterly. No, Mom whispered. It never was. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her. But then I saw it. Her hands trembling, eyes full of regret. She wasn't just a wife who got lied to. She was a woman who had lived for years in the echo of betrayal, trying to pretend it was silence. I didn't tell you because I was ashamed, she said. I looked at her then, not with anger, but with something closer to grief. Because Dad didn't just lie to us. He trapped her too. After that night with Mom, everything felt different. We weren't just exposing Dad's lies. We were walking through the wreckage he left behind. Every truth we dug up hurt someone. But the worst damage had already been done. We were just turning on the lights. So we kept going. We decided to visit every place he'd ever lived, every city on the list from the safe deposit box. Each one was a piece of the puzzle. In Kansas City, we found an old neighbor who remembered him as Greg Allen. Nice guy, she said. Always gave the kids ice cream money. But he had a different car every few months. Never liked that. In Detroit, a landlord told us. He was quiet, paid rent on time, had a different woman in the apartment every other year. Thought it was weird, but not my business. In Nashville, a woman said she saw him playing saxophone at a bar once. He called himself Carter. Smooth guy, sad eyes. He'd left trails. Crumbs, really. But just enough. Every city had pieces of him. Every apartment had furniture that didn't match. Closets that were half empty. Neighbors who never really knew him. It was like chasing a ghost with 10 faces. But no matter how far we traveled, we kept finding the same thing. A man who built lives, then vanished before they could collapse. And as we pieced the timeline together, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a man running from commitment. This was someone who needed control. Someone who got high off being irreplaceable. And we were done being part of his illusion. Her name was Darlene. We found her in Topeka, living in a small one-story house with yellow siding and a wind chime on the porch that never stopped moving, even when there was no breeze. She opened the door with a smile, the kind that said she'd been expecting us. "I figured it was just a matter of time," she said, stepping aside. "Come in." The living room was spotless, too spotless, like a staged memory. Photos lined the mantel, her and George laughing on a fishing boat, holding hands in front of a Christmas tree. In every picture, he looked like the perfect husband. "I met him in 1998, she said, pouring us sweet tea. "He told me his name was David Bennett, said his wife had passed years ago. We got married in 2001. Gina nearly choked. He married you?" She nodded slowly and reached for a drawer, pulled out a manila envelope. Inside was a marriage certificate. Same date as my parents' wedding anniversary. Same year. He hadn't just cheated. He had committed bigamy. She didn't cry, not once. But her hands shook as she put the paper back. "He used to leave every few weeks," she said. "Told me he was doing consulting work. I never asked questions." "We're sorry," I said. "No," she replied. "I'm sorry. For all of us." Then she stood up and walked to the fireplace. She took one of the wedding photos, stared at it for a long moment, then threw it into the flames. "I loved a man who never existed," she whispered. And just as we were about to leave, she handed us one final thing, a copy of his will. "It was mailed to me 3 days after he died," she said. "I never opened it, didn't want to. But maybe now it's time." We opened it in the car. He left everything to his children, but he never named a single one. The will was brief, cold, almost like a business memo. "All assets, monetary and physical, are to be divided among my children. No specific names required. My estate will trust my blood to sort it out." No names, no instructions, no executor. Just one man's final mess, dumped into the laps of a dozen people he never fully acknowledged. We passed the copy around the living room that night, back in Ohio. Nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, James broke the silence. "So, how many of us are there? 10? 11, said Rachel. "If you count the girl from New Mexico who reached out last week." "Don't forget the twins from Virginia Beach," added Sierra. "They're still waiting on DNA results." The room felt heavy with math. Gina sighed. "Let me guess, there's no official record of us. No way to prove who gets what unless we all come forward and claim it together." Frank nodded. "And if we don't, lawyers will fight for years. Probate court will eat the whole thing." We sat in silence again. Then Cameron said, "What if we don't let it get to that point?" "Well, what do you mean?" I asked. He leaned forward. "Well, what if we make a deal? A pact? No one gets a cent unless we all agree to tell the whole story. Publicly." Gina raised an eyebrow. "You mean go public with what you did?" "Exactly. No more secrets. He hid us all. Lied to all of us. If we're going to split the money, the world's going to know why." It was bold, risky, maybe even crazy. But as I looked around at the people in that room, people with the same blood but completely different lives, I realized something. We weren't just trying to claim an inheritance. We were reclaiming the truth. We knew it would be messy, painful, maybe even dangerous. But secrets rot from the inside out, and we were done living in that decay. So we built a website, TheRayalGeorgeAnderson.com. It's simple, stark, black and white. No ads, no drama, just truth. We uploaded everything. Letters, photos, scans of passports with different names but the same face. The will. Personal testimonies from every sibling who agreed to speak. Each city had a tab. Each woman had a story. We called it 10 cities. One father. Countless lies. Within 72 hours, it went viral. First, local news. Then regional. Then it exploded on Twitter, Reddit, and morning talk shows. People couldn't believe it. The man with 10 families. Father of the decade or master manipulator. DNA doesn't lie. But George Anderson did. Emails poured in. Some were from curious strangers. Others were from women we didn't recognize, wondering if their child might be one of us. And then came the silence from people who knew him. Former co-workers, high school friends, church members, even an old army buddy. One wrote, "He was the best man at my wedding. I can't believe this, but also I can." Another, "He borrowed $5,000 from me in '97 and vanished. Now I know where he went." It was like we'd cracked open a dam. And through that flood of voices, one thing became clear. George Anderson had spent a lifetime controlling the narrative. But now, the truth had a voice louder than his lies. And it was speaking from all 10 cities at once. It started with a simple email. Subject, "I think I'm number 11. She said her name was Lena, and she lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico. She'd read our story online and recognized the man in the photos immediately. I always knew something was off." Her message read, "He visited every few months, called from blocked numbers, gave me candy from a shop in Virginia Beach. My mom never talked about him, only said he was passing through." We video called her the next day. Lena looked just like Gina. Same dark eyes, same sharp jawline. The resemblance was uncanny. She held up an old photo. Her as a toddler, sitting on the lap of the man she knew as Uncle Ray. Same smirk, same posture, same George. "It's him, isn't it?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. We nodded. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stared into the camera like someone watching the walls of her childhood collapse in real time. "My mom died 2 years ago," Lena said. "I tried looking him up after that. But there was nothing. No social, no phone, not even an obituary. Like he was a ghost." She paused. "Now I know why. We sent her a DNA test kit. It came back a week later. Positive. Another sibling. Another family. Another mother who'd lived her whole life under the spell of a man who only ever gave pieces of himself. And never the whole truth." We added Lena to the website. Another dot on the map. Another voice in the chorus. The total now. 12 children. 12 truths. And possibly more. We should have seen it coming. A week after Lena's story went live, a legal envelope showed up at my door. Then another arrived at Cameron's. Then Gina's. Then Mia's. Notice of estate dispute. Petition to challenge beneficiaries. Filed by a woman named Brenda T., claiming to be George's legal spouse. From Virginia Beach. "I was his only wife," she wrote in a public statement. "The rest are liars, confused, or illegitimate. George wouldn't do this." We sent her the evidence, the website, the DNA reports, copies of the will. She responded by doubling down and lawyering up. 2 weeks later, a second woman filed a similar claim in Kansas. Then a third in Georgia. Our inbox turned into a battlefield. Most of us were ready to give up the money. It wasn't about that anymore. But Frank said it best. If they erase us from the will, they erase the truth with it. So we fought back. Frank used his law enforcement contacts. Rachel found a probate attorney willing to represent all of us together. It was messy. The hearings dragged for months. Brenda sobbed in court. One woman fainted when DNA results were announced. Reporters waited outside the courthouse, microphones ready. But truth is stubborn, and documents don't lie. George's will didn't name anyone, but the court accepted 12 verified biological children as rightful heirs. All assets, the judge ruled, will be liquidated and split equally among the confirmed descendants. We didn't cheer. There was no celebration, only silence. Money would never fix what he broke. But it was proof that we existed, and that his lies didn't win. It started as a joke. James said, "We should buy a billboard. Put his face on it. Let the whole town know who he really was." But no one laughed. The more we sat with it, the more it made sense. For years, George Anderson had crafted his image in every town. A kind, dependable man. A quiet hero. The kind of guy people trusted with their dogs, their daughters, their taxes. He fooled everyone. But now we had the truth. So we made it public. Really public. We rented a billboard just off the main highway that led into Maplewood, Ohio. His home base. The place where he'd raised us. Lied to us. Where half the town still thought he was some kind of role model. On a white background, in bold black letters, it read, "George Anderson had 10 families in 10 cities. We are all his children. This is his legacy. No logo, no signature, no explanation. Just truth, 6 feet tall." It shook the town. People pulled over to take pictures. Some cried. Others called the number we listed underneath. Just a voicemail directing them to our website. Some praised us, others hated us. But we didn't care. This wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about reclaiming our stories. He tried to bury us in shame, in silence. We answered with a billboard, a monument of exposure. A few days after the billboard went up, we got a knock at Mom's door. It was a tall man in his 70s, dressed in a faded blazer and holding a worn leather briefcase. "I'm looking for George Anderson's family," he said, "the ones from Maplewood." I stepped forward. "That's us." He gave a small sad smile. "Name's Harold Winslow. I was George's boss for nearly 20 years. Regional manager over at Mason and Leeds Insurance." He sat at our kitchen table, hat in his lap, eyes heavy with something that looked like shame. "I saw the billboard," he said quietly. "Then the website. I thought, I hoped, it was a different George Anderson. But then I saw his photo, and the letters he let out a long breath. I gave him raises, promotions, flexibility. He told me his son had cancer, took paid leave. I even bought him a plane ticket once so he could visit his dying aunt in Tulsa." He looked up at us, voice tightening. "He didn't have a sick son, did he?" We shook our heads. "No," I said. "He had 12 healthy children, just in 12 different homes." Harold nodded slowly, jaw clenched. "He conned everyone, not just you." Then he opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "These are his final employment records, benefits, retirement, paper trail. Might help in court." He stood to leave, then paused at the door. "You kids, I don't know what you're planning to do next. But whatever it is, don't let anyone rewrite this. He doesn't deserve to be remembered as a good man. We didn't, and we never will. We almost missed it. After the court ruling, the website traffic slowed. The interviews stopped. Some of us went back to our lives, or whatever was left of them. We thought the story had ended. But endings are tricky. Mum was cleaning out the attic when she found an old tackle box, rusted, tucked behind insulation. One of the latches was broken. Inside were fishing lures, a cracked compass, and a sealed envelope addressed simply, "To myself." We sat around the table as Gina read it out loud. His handwriting was shaky. rushed. I don't know why I do it. I used to think it was because I was lonely. Then I thought maybe I was cursed. But truth is, I like the beginning of things. I like being needed. The first I love you. The way they look at you like you're the center of their world. But it never lasts, so I move on, start again. New city, new lies, same escape. One day, they'll find each other. I know it. Maybe even hate me for it. But if they do, maybe they'll finally have something I never did. Each other. Silence. Gina folded the letter, her hands shaking. Mia wiped her eyes. Cameron muttered, "Coward." And I just sat there, stunned. Not by what he said, but by what he almost admitted. He didn't feel guilty. He felt seen. Even in shame, he wanted the last word. But he didn't get it. Because we were already rewriting the ending ourselves. He wanted to be remembered as the mystery no one could solve. Instead, he became the man we made visible. The garage was the last place we hadn't touched. It still smelled like him. Old leather, motor oil, dust. His workbench was covered in tools no one had moved since the funeral. A photo of our family, Mom, Gina, me, still hung on the wall, framed like a lie. We gathered there at sundown, all 12 of us. Rachel brought the cardboard box. Inside, letters, passports, photos, marriage certificates, keys to houses that no longer belonged to anyone. The physical remnants of George Anderson's secret empire. Frank lit the first match. We stepped outside into the yard, dug a small pit, and fed the fire one memory at a time. A love letter from '88. A photo with a fake birthday scrawled on the back. The map we drew that night in Mom's kitchen. One by one, the symbols of his double life turned to smoke. Gina tossed in the last object. The ring he'd given our mom on their 25th anniversary. She didn't flinch, just turned and walked away before it hit the flames. None of us spoke. Not because we were out of things to say, but because we were finally at peace. He had tried to live 1,000 lives. In the end, we gave him one death. Not quiet, not buried, burned, remembered, exposed. That night we stayed up late, watching the embers die. And for the first time, we weren't thinking about him. We were thinking about us. It's been 2 years. The billboard is gone now, taken down after a storm snapped it in half. We didn't bother replacing it. It had served its purpose. People still whisper when they see us in town. Some say we were brave. Others call us bitter. But we don't mind. We know the truth. We lived it. 12 of us. From different states, different mothers, different decades. But now we're something more than names in a file. We're siblings. We're survivors. We're the ending he never expected. We used part of the inheritance to start something he never built. A future. A non-profit. For kids born from lies. For women who were promised forever and left with nothing but bills and broken hearts. We called it 12 roots, because that's what we were. Roots from the same tree, growing in opposite directions, somehow finding our way back. We speak at schools now. Prisons, courthouses, about deception, identity, truth. Sometimes people ask if we forgive him. And honestly, some of us do. Some of us don't. And that's okay, because forgiveness isn't a gift you give the dead. It's the peace you offer yourself once the flames go out and you're the one left standing in the smoke. The last time we gathered was on his birthday. We didn't say his name, we just held hands, laughed, ate, lived. Not in his shadow, but in each other's light. And that, more than anything, is what he never planned for. We became a family, not because of him, in spite of him.